I didn't even want to live here. The townhouse was beige, comically beige, the kind of beige that looked like it had been carefully selected to offend absolutely no one. It was a color that whispered, not spoke. Everything about it felt generic, like it was spat out of a suburban printer set to default. But I wasn't here for aesthetics or convenience. This was an assignment, and the address came straight from the Department of Defense. My job was to follow orders. The DoD handled the lease, arranged for the furniture, and even set up the internet before I arrived. I was told to lay low, blend in, and not attract attention. I thought I was doing a great job at that, until the HOA came knocking. It was the 5th day after I moved in. I'd just finished a run and was nursing a bottle of water on the porch, trying to enjoy the early evening breeze. That's when I saw them. 3 people, mid-50s or so, power walking down the sidewalk like they had warrants and somewhere to be. They didn't come up slowly or hesitate. No smile or neighborly wave. They made a beeline for me, clipboards in hand, matching windbreakers rustling like a declaration of authority. "Hi there," the woman in the middle said brightly, her teeth far too white for her expression to feel warm. "We're with the Homeowners Association." I gave a polite nod. "Good evening. We just wanted to stop by and welcome you to the neighborhood," she continued, her tone flipping between friendly and formal like she couldn't decide which would intimidate more. "I'm Carol. This is Bob and Denise. We noticed you moved in last week and wanted to go over a few things. Just standard HOA protocol." Bob nodded, checking something off on his clipboard. Denise peered behind me, trying to see into my house, like she thought I had a meth lab hidden behind the curtains. Carol's eyes narrowed just a little. "And actually, if you don't mind, we'd like to review your lease. It's part of our policy. All residents must provide a copy for our records." I raised an eyebrow, still holding my water bottle. "My lease?" "Yes," Carol said with a practiced smile. "For verification, we ensure that all residents are in compliance with community guidelines. It's nothing personal." I didn't smile back. "It's signed by the Department of Defense." The silence after that was thick enough to chew. Carol blinked like she misheard me. Bob actually stopped writing. Denise's lips parted slightly, just a crack. "I'm sorry?" Carol asked, her voice suddenly cooler. "The Department of Defense signed my lease," I repeated. "You can't access it. Most of it's redacted, and the rest is restricted." There was another pause, this one longer. Carol laughed, trying to cover the awkward shift. "Oh, you're joking." "I'm not." Now they were staring at me like I'd just told them I was living under witness protection. Carol looked at Bob, who looked at Denise, who suddenly seemed very interested in her clipboard. "Well," Carol said, clearing her throat, "we still need a copy. We have to keep things consistent. If you could just email us." "No can do," I said. "You'd need federal clearance. Even if I wanted to show it to you, I couldn't." Denise tried to interject. "Maybe just the first page? Or the summary?" "It's all classified," I said flatly. "Even the address is part of a non-disclosure. I'm only here because the federal government placed me here. That's all I can say." Bob was the first to break the silence. "You saying you're military?" "I'm saying I work for the Department of Defense. That's all I'm allowed to disclose. And if there's a problem with my presence here, you can call the number listed on the lease. Just know that whoever answers will ask for a clearance code you don't have." Carol's mouth tightened. "We have rules in this community." "I follow federal law," I replied. "I think that supersedes neighborhood watch." She shifted on her heels, clearly not used to being told no. "You'll be hearing from us." I smiled politely, looking forward to it. They turned without another word and walked away, noticeably slower this time, less like they were serving justice, and more like they were walking away from a bear they'd accidentally poked. I watched them until they turned the corner, then went back inside, closed the door, locked it. Not that I was worried. No one in their right mind would come poking around once they realized what the situation was. Still, I pulled the blinds halfway closed and checked the front camera feed. 3 HOA members walking back up the street, whispering animatedly, occasionally glancing back toward my unit. It wasn't the first time I'd encountered civilians trying to flex their tiny slice of power, but it was the first time I'd seen it in cargo shorts and sun visors. They had no idea what they were messing with, and frankly, that was fine by me. I wasn't there to make friends or go to potlucks. I was there to observe, report, and stay invisible. The mission didn't involve arguing with homeowners over whether my trash bins were pulled in on time. But I also knew that people like that couldn't help themselves. They didn't care who you were. They cared about control. And right now, they felt like I had broken their rules and gotten away with it. That was a problem. For them. For me, it was just another day in beige suburban purgatory. The second visit came 2 nights later, just after sunset. I had just finished reading a report on my secure laptop and was halfway through a cup of decaf when I heard the knock again. It wasn't a friendly, curious tap like the first time. This knock had urgency. 3 sharp raps, followed by silence. Then another 3, like they were trying to establish dominance through my front door. I stood up slowly, taking my time. I already knew who it was. I didn't need to check the camera. I'd installed motion sensors and a feed alert system. The notification had hit my phone the moment they stepped onto the porch. Same 3 as before, Carol, Bob, and Denise. They looked different this time, though. The clipboards were gone, replaced with a single manila folder in Carol's hand. Their windbreakers were zipped all the way up, faces more tight than forced smiles. I opened the door but left the screen shut between us. "Evening?" I said, as neutrally as I could manage. Carol stepped forward like she was leading an interrogation. "We need to speak with you. This isn't a casual visit." "Didn't think it was," I said. "But this is still my porch, so keep it civil." She blinked at that but didn't back down. "We reviewed your comments from last time, about the Department of Defense. We've looked into it." I raised an eyebrow. "You looked into the DOD?" "Yes." "And we couldn't." "Verify anything. No lease on file with the management company. No registration with the HOA's database. That's not standard protocol." "Right," I said. "Because it's not a standard lease." Bob finally spoke, his voice lower than before. "We're prepared to issue a formal violation notice. Failure to comply with HOA lease transparency rules. That comes with a $500 fine and potential legal escalation if not resolved." I stared at him for a moment. "You understand what you're saying, right? You're threatening someone with a federal housing assignment. Over a lease." "We're enforcing community regulations," Denise added, sounding more like she was convincing herself than me. "This isn't about where you work," I gave a tight laugh. "It's exactly about where I work, and who signed the lease. You're trying to apply neighborhood rules to a government-sanctioned operation." Carol leaned forward slightly, her knuckles white around the folder. "We need to see the document. We won't escalate if you just show us the lease." I unlocked the screen door and stepped out onto the porch, closing it behind me. "All right," I said, my tone shifting just enough to drop the casual edge. "Let's get serious then." They flinched a little. Not visibly, not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. "You want to see the lease?" I asked, pacing slowly in front of them. "Call the number on the lease agreement. You won't find it online. It's not with any property manager or public database. The Department of Defense doesn't run their housing like that." Bob cleared his throat, but I held up a finger. "They'll ask for your clearance level. You don't have one. They'll ask for your agency code. You don't have that either. And when you fail both checks, they won't politely hang up. You'll be flagged. You'll go on a list." Denise paled, glancing at Carol. "I don't know what you think this is," I continued, "but this isn't some HOA standoff over lawn height or mailbox paint. I'm here under government orders. I don't answer to neighborhood policy. I answer to people whose names you'll never know. So if you want to press this, go ahead. Just know that once that phone call happens, it doesn't come back. You won't get a do-over. Carol was silent. Her mouth opened like she was going to say something, then closed again. Her hand relaxed on the folder. Bob tried again, quieter now. You could just show us the first page. No confidential info. I looked at him, dead in the eye. The first page is redacted. The second page is classified. The third page has a black bar where my name should be. You want to see it? Get security clearance. Otherwise, stop knocking on my door. We stood there for a long moment, all four of us in the porch-light glow, moths circling like they were watching a drama unfold. Then Carol took a step back. There's been a misunderstanding, she muttered. I didn't say anything. I wanted the silence to do the work now. We'll talk to the board, she added, reaching into the folder. She pulled out a gift card to a local cafe and handed it to me with a nervous smile. As a peace offering. I took it, without looking at it. You'll get further with an apology. No one said anything. They turned and walked down the path, slower than when they arrived. Less like sentinels, more like people unsure if they'd just woken a sleeping dog or tried to punch a bear. I watched until they were out of sight, then stepped back inside and locked the door. That night, everything changed. I wasn't left another note, no follow-up emails. The HOA website, which had previously listed my address as Lease Pending, suddenly updated to simply read active, no explanation, no fanfare. And then the fruit basket arrived. 2 days later, it was waiting on my porch when I got home, wrapped in cellophane, filled with apples, pears, and a small bottle of local honey. No note. But I didn't need one. That basket said everything. They'd made the call. Maybe they didn't even get through. Maybe someone on the other end of that number shut it down fast. Or maybe they did get through and got read the kind of script that makes people rethink their priorities. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer on their radar. I was above it. And that was exactly how I liked it. The shift was almost immediate. After the fruit basket incident, what I had started calling it in my head, everything in the neighborhood changed. Not all at once, and not overtly, but subtly. The kind of subtle that makes your skin prickle if you're trained to notice it. And I was. The very next day, the neighbor across the street, Mark, I think his name was, middle-aged, khaki shorts, year-round type, was suddenly very interested in his front lawn. Specifically, interested in trimming the hedges with his back, turned just enough that he could sneak glances at my house every few seconds. He wasn't good at being discreet, which made it all the more obvious. His wife came out once to hand him a lemonade, and they had a whispered conversation, while both casually peered toward my living room window. When I stepped outside to get the mail, she grabbed his arm and they both went still, pretending to examine a leaf. I gave them a little wave. Mark turned red. She waved back, slowly. That was how it began. Over the next few days, I noticed a pattern forming. People who used to walk their dogs right past my driveway suddenly decided to cross the street. A few houses down, the woman who jogged every morning with her golden retriever now looped a block earlier, giving my corner a wide berth. Kids on bikes swerved dramatically whenever they neared my house, like my lawn was cursed. I saw a teenager, helmet half, on earbuds dangling, literally stop, look up at the townhouse, then turn his bike around and go back the way he came. It would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. The whispers started next. I couldn't hear them directly, of course, but I knew the signs. A neighbor hurrying past my unit with their phone angled slightly out, probably snapping a picture. A car slowing down with its windows down just long enough to get a look at the windows. The mailman, who used to nod and say, "Hey, how's it going?" now just dropped the envelopes in the box and speed walked away without a glance. Then came the stories. One evening, I caught part of a conversation while I was picking up dinner at the local deli. A man in line behind me, talking too loudly. To someone on the phone. Yeah, that's the one. Townhouse on Brookstone. Real quiet guy. Ex-military, I think. CIA, maybe. Nah, no one really knows. But Carol tried to get his lease and, well, let's just say she doesn't ask questions. Anymore. He noticed me just as I turned around. He went quiet. I didn't say anything. I just held his gaze for a second longer than comfortable. He looked away, stared at the soda fridge like it had the answers. Back at the townhouse, my security feed started picking up more strange behavior. A dark sedan parked across the street late at night. Same car, same time, every night for nearly a week. The driver never got out, just sat there. Once, I walked out onto my porch with a coffee, stared directly at them. They pulled away 2 minutes later. The next morning, the streetlight above where they parked was out. Coincidence? Maybe, but I didn't believe in those anymore. Meanwhile, the HOA had gone dark. They used to flood my inbox with community updates, reminders, and passive-aggressive notices about lawn maintenance or garbage bin placement. Now, nothing. No newsletters, no meeting invites. I checked the HOA website out of curiosity and noticed a change. Upcoming board meetings were now marked as virtual closed attendance. I wasn't invited. No surprise there. I heard from one of the older residents, Mr. Langley, who had lived in the neighborhood since it was built, that the HOA had shifted to executive session format for certain discussions, whatever that meant. But he told me with a chuckle, "Only ever seen them do that when they're scared of a lawsuit or something worse." Worse. That was the word he used. Like I was something worse. Then came the trees. It started with a landscaping crew that showed up out of nowhere one morning. I hadn't seen them before. New uniforms, no local branding on the trucks. They started planting along the shared walkway and near the front yard border. At first, I thought it was a community upgrade until I noticed the placement. 4 trees, tall and fast-growing, were positioned directly in front of my living room and bedroom windows. The only windows that had a direct view of the rest of the street. I stepped outside to ask one of the workers what was going on. He didn't speak much English, just shrugged and pointed toward the HOA office at the end of the block. The request had come from them, he said. Special order, expedited. I watched them finish the job without interference. I wasn't going to stop them. If the HOA wanted to block their view of me that badly, I'd let them. I had nothing to hide, and they had plenty to be afraid of, even if they didn't understand why. What they saw as secrecy, I saw as structure. What they thought was isolation was standard operating procedure for me. I was here to observe, report, and adapt. Not to make friends, not to join book clubs or attend summer cookouts. And the funny thing? The more they avoided me, the easier my job became. People started talking when they thought I couldn't hear them. Parents warned their kids not to get too close to that house. One kid, some high schooler who lived a few doors down, bragged to his friends that he'd seen me unload weapons from a duffel bag in my driveway. It was gym equipment, a 45-pound barbell and resistance bands. But I didn't correct the story. Why would I? Let the myth grow. Fear was a tool like any other. I used to wonder what it would take for a community like this, so small, so polished, so rigid, to unravel. Turns out, all it took was one government lease they couldn't read, one blank spot on their map, one man they couldn't control, and I hadn't even done anything yet. 3 months after I moved in, the neighborhood finally settled into a strange new normal. People had adapted, warily, quietly, but adapted all the same. I was no longer the new guy. I was the presence, a silent fixture like the weather or property taxes. You don't question it, you just work around it. The HOA never bothered me again. Not a single knock, not a single email. I became a ghost on their registry, technically listed but never spoken of. A neighbor told me they referred to my unit in meetings as Unit 12 without naming me. Like Voldemort, if Voldemort paid his dues on time and kept his hedges at regulation height. I found that amusing. What they didn't know was that The real work had only just begun. My assignment, the actual reason the Department of Defense had placed me here, had very little to do with the townhouse itself. This wasn't a stakeout in the traditional sense. No binoculars, no wiretaps, no photos taken through blinds. It was information gathering on a broader scale. Behavioral analytics, proximity tracking, subtle influence testing. And Brookstone Court was the perfect testbed. The neighborhood, with its polished lawns, strict regulations, and constant digital activity, made for a controlled environment. Every household had at least 2 smart devices, cameras, thermostats, speaker systems, always connected, always talking. My job wasn't to spy on them directly. It was to watch what happened around them when a variable like me was introduced. A government asset embedded deep in the middle of suburbia. The HOA's reaction was phase 1, their slow unraveling, their paranoia, the shift in their communication strategies. It all fed into a larger data stream. Somewhere, in a secure facility I couldn't name, analysts were reviewing everything. How fear traveled from one household to another. How authority buckled under ambiguity. How an entity with no clear threat could dismantle years of community cohesion just by existing. By month 4, the data was crystal clear. I didn't need to do anything more. My presence had already rewritten the ecosystem. People stopped holding block parties. They stopped organizing garage sales. Even the annual Halloween parade, previously a highlight of the HOA calendar, was postponed indefinitely due to logistical concerns. In reality, no one wanted their kid accidentally knocking on the spy's door for candy. Ironically, I had become the very thing the community feared most, an unknown. And unknowns don't fit in HOA handbooks. I thought that would be the end of it until the knock came again. But this time, it wasn't the HOA. It was a woman. Mid-30s, business casual, calm. No clipboard, no nervous fidgeting. She knocked once, waited, then knocked again. 2 short, precise taps. The pattern. One I recognized. I opened the door, and she didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. "Orders have changed," she said simply, handing me an envelope. I took it, nodded once, and stepped back inside. Closed the door. Locked it. Inside the envelope was a simple message, printed on heavy stock paper. Objective complete. Stage 2 authorized. Below it was a set of new coordinates, a fresh briefing QR code, and a date. I had 3 days. 3 days to wrap up what remained, wipe the systems, extract my data modules, and prepare for relocation. The townhouse, of course, would be cleaned and reissued. Another asset would likely come through in a few months, maybe someone less visible. Or perhaps that visibility was the point all along. I didn't question the larger strategy. I trusted the design. What surprised me, though, was what happened after. I got the orders. I started receiving notes. The first was left under my windshield wiper. Handwritten. No signature. "Sorry about how we treated you at first. We were scared. I guess we still are. But you never did anything wrong. Just thought you should know." The second showed up in my mailbox the next morning. "If you're leaving soon, thanks for keeping the street safe." Weird thing to say, I know. But it always felt like nothing bad would happen while you were here. Strange comfort. The third came 2 days later, slid through my mail slot in an unmarked envelope. "Don't tell anyone I wrote this, but if something ever goes wrong again, come back." By the final day, I had a stack of them. Some typed, some scribbled in pencil, one drawn in crayon. A child's note. "You look like Batman." I smiled at that one. The fear had evolved into something else. Respect, maybe. A warped kind of appreciation. They never knew exactly who I was or what I did, but they began to understand that not everything unknown was dangerous. That maybe the scariest thing wasn't a man with a classified lease, but their own inability to live alongside something bigger than themselves. I left at 3 a.m. just as the order specified. Quiet extraction, no witnesses. The street was asleep, save for a single porch light on the far end of the block. Mark's house. I saw him standing there in the shadows, arms crossed, sipping coffee. He didn't wave, but he nodded, and I nodded back. As I pulled away, I took one last look at the house. The beige box that had become a legend, a blank spot on a map, a ghost in the machine. They'd talk about me for years, I was sure. Neighbors would whisper to new residents. Kids would dare each other to ring the doorbell. And when the next agent arrived, if they ever did, they'd find a community already shaped by the first. By me. I didn't need a goodbye. I never do. I left nothing behind but clean walls, perfect blinds, and a fruit basket I had never touched, still sealed in cellophane on the kitchen counter. And somewhere, deep in a government server, a new file began compiling. Brookstone Court, Behavioral Containment Test, complete. Result: inconclusive fear yields passive compliance. Recommend further observation. Status: proceed to phase 2.